Good evening, everyone. I'm Archit Tashadri. Thanks so much for joining us. Today is Saturday, August the 26th. The time now is 10:30 in the morning in New York, 3:30 in London, 4:30 in Cape Town, and 8 p.m. here in New Delhi. Tonight, we take a look at North Korea's latest move just as things were easing up between Washington and Pyongyang. North Korea has fired several short-range missiles into the sea on Saturday. All of this happening as the U.S. and South Korea conducted joint military drills. We'll get to that story a little later on, plus more global stories. But first, a look at the major news headlines around the world. A gun battle is underway in Jammu and Kashmir between security forces and terrorists. 8 security personnel have now been killed in an encounter with the terrorists in Pulwama. 2 terrorists have been neutralized. Hurricane Harvey slams into Texas with initial winds of up to 215 kilometers an hour. It's battered the coastal areas and is one of the biggest storms to hit the mainland of the United States in more than a decade. After a suspected terrorist is shot down in Brussels, another suspect is arrested outside of Buckingham Palace, armed with a sword, after he repeatedly shouted Allahu Akbar. We'll continue bringing you the latest out of the Europe terror incidents. And North Korea launches 3 short-range missiles on Saturday. The tests coincide with the 10-day defensive war exercises that the United States and ally South Korea conduct every year. First up, gun battle with terrorists. Security forces are now locked in a gun battle with terrorists in the Pulwama district of Jammu and Kashmir. 8 security personnel have now lost their lives, while 2 of the terrorists have been gunned down. Here's the latest that we know. It all started around 4 o'clock this morning local time. A CRPF camp came under attack in a high security area. Now, close to the offices of the district commissioner and senior police officials in the Shopian districts on the Pulwama highway in Jammu and Kashmir, there was an encounter that took place right after that. Now, according to the latest reports, 3 terrorists were involved. Security forces have contained them in 2 blocks of the camp. The army has now called the Pulwama encounter a Fedayeen attack. All the families in the affected blocks of the camp have now been evacuated and accounted for.
In the early hours this morning, 2 terrorists had entered the DPL Pulwama, and they entered the family quarters, and there were a lot of families there. So in the initial action, we have lost JK police constable and 2 CRPF persons, and then thereafter, of course, we have brought the families out from those blocks. Our troops are continuing with the operation, and hopefully in a short while from now, we will be able to eliminate the terrorists who are there.
Well, since last year, the presence of terrorists in South Kashmir has increased, particularly in the area of Shopian. The operations against these terrorists still continue. Now, we have opened at least 7 to 8 new operating bases there in Shopian. The situation there is a little better than before. People are now getting back to their daily routine and day-to-day activities. The violence level has reduced to a great extent, according to experts in that area. Now, Jammu and Kashmir police have ruled out the possibility of any hostages right now being held by the terrorists. The Jaish-e-Mohammed group has now claimed responsibility for the attack. Officials say the camp was targeted to inflict high casualties on forces, especially the troops based in that district. Now, the Pulwama attack was discussed during a high-level meet chaired by Home Minister Rajnath Singh on Saturday. Let's get the reaction from the ground as and when it is unfolding. We have our correspondent there in Jammu and Kashmir, Khalid Hussain, joining us live from Srinagar this hour. Khalid, certainly a dramatic development. What is the mood? What is the latest there? Have things taken an improvement since earlier on Saturday?
Well, this time if we talk about the spot, the firing has stopped from last 30 minutes. However, search are continuously being done in the premises of the DPL All the blocks are being searched one by one, and the death toll has definitely gone this time very up. It's 8 casualties to the security forces. 4 of them are for J&K police, 4 for CRPF, and also 2 militants have been gunned down by the security forces. As per the reports by the sources who told us that around 3 militants were sneaked in inside the DPL in the morning at around 4:20 a.m. So one more militant may be there, but there is no fire from last 30 minutes. It's believed that he may have also have got killed, but they haven't retrieved yet his body. So the search are on, and the Jammu Kashmir police chief said me that we are going to conclude this encounter in late evening today, and it will not be allowed to be carried out the whole night, because that will be the problem for the security forces to be there and lay the cordon all along the night. However, the operation is still on. The searches are being conducted in the E block, especially where the militants were first got in and fired upon the security personnel in the morning.
Right.
So one militant is still believed maybe he has got killed, but the dead body is not retrieved yet.
All right, Khalid, let me also ask you, in terms of what police are saying at this point, the good news, if anything, at least there were no hostages being held by the terrorists. But we do know at this hour, the JEM, the Jaish-e-Mohammed, they have claimed responsibility for this very latest attack, and saying that this camp was specifically targeted because they wanted to inflict as many casualties as they could. I mean, why do we see this happening repeatedly again and again, specifically in this part of the state?
Well, if we talk of the Pulwama, it's well known that it's a militant-dominated area, and the risk of attacks is very high in that area. What we have been told about this attack, that the militants who carried the attack were from Jaish-e-Mohammed, and Jaish-e-Mohammed spokesperson himself has called as local news agency in Srinagar and claimed the responsibility. And also DGP police said that we also had the inputs that the attack may be carried by the Jaish-e-Mohammed. So there was input with the security forces that such type of attack will be carried by militants. And these all militants are said are foreigners, Pakistani nationals, and have infiltrated a month and a half before from the Poonch Valley and have sneaked into the Shipyan via Mughal Road, P.S.D. Gully. So this is the group from that big group, which around 18 militants have sneaked in. That was the information before 1.5 months, and now one of 3 of them have carried this attack in Pulwama this morning. So definitely it's a big attack carried by the militants today. Casualties really gone up. 8 casualties we have seen of security personnel, but the security forces have cordoned the area and eliminated 2 of them, and one is believed have died, but the dead body is not yet retrieved.
All right, Khalid Hussain getting us the very latest on this story out of Jammu and Kashmir in Srinagar. Khalid, thank you so much for all of those updates. We'll keep track and bring you more news and updates as it develops. In tonight's discussion, North Korea taunts Donald Trump yet again. Well, just when we thought things were sort of easing up between Washington and Pyongyang, well, things have taken a turn yet again this weekend. Well, more missile firing by North Korea, 3 this time, out of which one of them failed. But the missiles were new. So were the launchers, indicating that there perhaps is some advance in North Korea's military capability. Here's the report.
The North Koreans love to tease, taunt and intimidate the US and of course South Korea. In their latest round of saber-rattling, they fired 3 short-range missiles from the East Coast, showing their contempt for US warnings against more missile tests. The 300mm missiles were fired from multiple rocket launchers. US analysts say it indicated an advance in their capability. The US says one missile blew up shortly after launch. The other 2 flew around 250 kilometers before hitting the sea. The US Pacific Command says that kind of range is sufficient for the North Koreans to hit not only Seoul, the capital, also the city of Pyeongtaek, about 100 kilometers further south, where US and Korean military bases are located, and an anti-ballistic missile battery which the US is installing in Songju nearby. The new North Korean missiles are expected to gradually replace the earlier 240mm missiles, which are a staple of the North's inventory. In fact, the North has repeatedly demonstrated its ability to mass deploy rocket artillery that can hit Seoul less than 60 kilometers from the border. Donald Trump is yet to react to the missile firing. But a poll by Harvard University's Center for American Political Studies shows that 56% believe Trump's fire and fury remark earlier this month went too far. They said his remarks achieved nothing. Nearly 62% said Trump should continue with Obama's policy of strategic patience with the North. That policy called for some more sanctions to pressure the North to return to dialogue. Clearly, the American public is on the fence when it comes to North Korea. Support for Trump will only come when his policy begins to deliver results. Bureau Report, WION.
All right, let's take a look at all of this and break it all down. The war of words between Washington and Pyongyang. Of course, these two leaders neck and neck, taking jabs at each other left, right, and center. Well, the escalation in tension started with President Donald Trump's fire and fury comments back on August the 8th. Here's what he said, quote, "North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen." The rhetoric from Trump, of course, continued the next few days with more statements and tweets. The U.S. president then called on North Korean authorities to get their act together. He even tweeted one saying that the military is locked and loaded for any situation. Now, when North Korea decided to de-escalate, President Trump changed the track and then turned the decision, quote, "a well-reasoned one." Well, on the other hand, the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, was somewhat firm but balanced in his statements. On August the 11th, he called on the global community to send a combined message to get some effective movement out of the North Korean regime. Recently, he even said he was pleased to see restraint from Pyongyang, in fact, just this week. All right, now let's get you a timeline of all of the responses that have come in from the other side, South Korea and the global community, the world reaction that's come in on recent times. On July the 3rd, NATO called for a firm response after North Korea carried out a missile launch. Almost 3 weeks later, the United States and South Korea conducted a live fire exercise, which was a response to North Korea's ICBM test on August the 5th. The United States toughened its sanctions against North Korea. The U.S. and South Korea then went ahead with their plans to conduct the joint military exercises, despite the North's opposition. All right, so what are the exact weapons when it comes to North Korea, the missile ranges? Let's give you sort of a pictorial view of how all of this looks. All right. The type of missile that North Korea does have. North Korea, in fact, occupies a Hwasong-5. It also has Hwasong-6 missiles, which is an estimated range of 1,000 kilometers. The Pukgongsong missile, which has a range of about 1,000 kilometers. There's also the Nodong missile. That's got a range of about 1,300 kilometers. Then there's the Musudan missile that has a range a little bit wider, 3,500 kilometers. Now, these missiles have already been tested. Let's also take a look at the missiles North Korea is now developing. I mean, take a look at this wide range here. I mean, all the way from North Korea across the Pacific, all the way there. That could reach the mainland part of the United States. Also developing the KN-14. Now, that has an estimated range of 10,000 kilometers. The KN-08, which has a range of almost 12,000 kilometers over there, you see there in the map, that could certainly hit the mainland of the United States. All right, so that's the range. Those are different ones. In fact, just recently, there was also a threat in Guam, a U.S. territory, when things sort of de-escalated. When it comes to North Korea, though, India's leanings in recent times have changed. In fact, India used to be North Korea's third largest trade partner until 2015. But with North Korea advancing its missile program, it has now faced global condemnation, as well as fresh sanctions from the United Nations. Recently, in an exclusive conversation with WION earlier this year, the North Korean ambassador to India, Kai Chong-yong, called for deeper ties with India. Let's listen in.
Regards the bilateral relations with India is very important. Why? India is regionally big power and a very populous country. India is one of the, the member of the founder NAM is played a very important role representing the third world countries so far. That's why my government all the time is supported the Indian government. So especially we honestly want India should be surely the permanent member of the UNSC, UN Security Council.
Well, in recent times, the Indian government has made sure that it's taken a tough stand by the United States against North Korea. Recently, in a phone call with U.S. President, we also had a situation where they were able to talk things out. So certainly India, United States and North Korea, interesting allies, that dynamic, how India is sort of taking a stance on how all of this goes. Let's get perspective and dive right into this discussion. Let's go to former ambassador to South Korea. Joining us now from New Delhi, we have Vishnu Prakash on this story. Vishnu Prakash, thank you so much for joining us, sir. We appreciate it. Let me ask you, dive into this. Just when we saw things sort of taking a step back, it seemed like North Korea wasn't being as aggressive, and then this, U.S. and South Korea doing their annual drills, perhaps North didn't like it, and then now 3 more missile tests this weekend. What do we expect North? What is their strategy or plan moving forward? What are your thoughts?
Well, historically, whenever there are joint military exercises between USA and North Korea and South Korea, tensions get ratcheted up, and there are provocations by North Korea. There are bellicose statements, there are missile tests, there is firing, etc. By those standards, this time, surprisingly, the temperature has been low. And if you recall, after the 12th August telephonic conversation between President Xi and President Trump, there has been a sudden dialing down of rhetoric. And even though the military exercises started on the 21st of August, there has not been any strong statement, any provocative statement, bellicose statement by North Korea. And now they have tested missiles, which I would more or less regard as business as usual. There is nothing exceptional about it.
Mr. Prakash, let me also ask you, when it comes to the grave threat between the United States and North Korea, there was a lot of speculation about what may happen on the U.S. territory in Guam. I mean, that really sent the global community, the reaction that started to come in, and then things perhaps took a back seat. Now we see North Korea yet again putting out more short-range missile tests. How grave of a threat are we talking about when it comes to North Korea, India, some of these other Asian countries, and of course the United States? How concerned should they be when it comes to North Korea's nuclear ambitions?
Well, the international community is rather concerned, very concerned, gravely concerned at the nuclear and missile ambitions of North Korea. The proliferation of weapons of mass destruction in the North Korean hands have been very rapid. They have proven the experts wrong by demonstrating and perfecting better and better missiles, more lethal missiles, and they have conducted 5 nuclear tests. There are some experts believe that the 6th nuclear test may also be conducted. So as far as the proliferation by North Korea is concerned, as far as their ambitions of missile and nuclear technology is concerned, we should all be very, very concerned, because not only North Korea is developing the WMD, but they are also proliferating. Now, as far as the threat is concerned of hostilities on conflict breaking out, I would regard that as very small, for the simple reason that bellicose statements are a trademark, a hallmark of North Korea, and even the threat to USA has not been the first, will not be the last. As early as 2013, and even before that, they had threatened Guam. But at that time, they did not have an ICBM or a IRBM which could have reached Guam. Now they have an ICBM. But I believe that North Korean regime's instinct of survival is very strong. They know that if they try anything funny with USA in particular, or for that matter with South Korea or Japan, there will be utter devastation in North Korea, and the regime as we know today will cease to exist. So I think it's brinkmanship. They engage in brinkmanship with the objective of engaging or forcing USA to enter into a direct dialogue with them.
Well, in recent times, in fact, the Indian government has appreciated the tough stance by the United States against North Korea. In fact, just recently, U.S. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Narendra Modi, they talked. They also appreciated each other and the strong leadership in uniting the world against North Korea. Back in July, the MEA, in fact, condemned North Korea's 2 ICBM launches, saying the missile and the nuclear program does pose a grave threat to India's security as well as international peace. So for the most part, many countries, many world leaders are uniting, condemning North Korea. Of course, even the UN sanctions are really taking a tough stance and putting some of those sanctions in place to hurt North Korea's export. But it really looks like North Korea is sort of ignoring all of this and doing what it continues to do. Push its nuclear ambitions and make sure it sort of sends that message, especially to the United States and the Korean Peninsula, that it is not going to deter. It is going to continue testing these missiles, whether they're short-range or long-range missiles. Let me also ask you this question, Mr. Vishnu Prakash, with regards to this. How will North Korea, with the sanctions, be impacted, if at all? Do they even simply care?
Well, they do care, but they are taking the sanctions in their stride. I would like to offer 2 comments here. One, I do not think that under any known circumstance, and the emphasis on known, North Korea will give away its weapons of mass destruction. They will not. They see this as a guarantee for regime survival, and they are people who have followed the international developments closely. They know what has happened to regimes which had given away their nuclear weapons. I do not see North Korea rolling back its nuclear weapon program. The best outcome is a freeze, and under IAEA inspections, that in my mind is the best outcome. Now, why the sanctions have not been effective, why they have not been able to have the sting that they were expected to be, simple answer is just one country called China. China is the patron of North Korea. More than 90 to 95% of the trade of North Korea is with China. China is the lifeline of North Korea. And China will not allow the North Korean regime to collapse. And that is the reason. And you know, the trade across the Yalu River, there is a 1700 kilometer boundary, maritime and land boundary between North Korea and China. The trade continues unabated. Lot goes on undocumented.
Right.
So that is the reason why the sanctions have not been effective, and that continues to be the case.
Mr. Prakash, let me also ask you about this. U.S. President Donald Trump has continuously pushed China, saying they need to do more with the issue of North Korea, saying that China has been too lenient. In fact, just this week, we also saw that North Korea is going to allow Russian tourists to tour the country. So certainly North Korea playing its diplomatic cards very well with China and Russia. Now, does this mean that the other world leaders are perhaps going to isolate either Russia or China when it comes to dealing with the North Korean nuclear crisis?
I'm afraid it's easier said than done. Isolating China is not easy. China is a major power. It's an ascending power. Its political ambitions, its security, its defense strengths, its security strengths, its economic strengths, its military strengths are considerable. And even if you look at USA and China relations, $650 billion in annual trade, $300 billion in investments, and a very robust multi-dimensional cooperation. I do not see the world having the ability, or US having the ability, despite the rhetoric, despite the pressure of isolating China. And for China, they have made a strategic investment, a security investment in North Korea. They have decided that North Korea will remain within their sphere of influence. And they are not going to give up North Korea, because that would mean a huge political and diplomatic and strategic setback for China. So I think we are in a very difficult situation. And once again, I believe that the only way forward, by the way, conflict is not the way forward. Military options are practically non-existent because of the havoc that they will cause.
Right.
The only way forward is a negotiated settlement of the issue, and that will entail direct talks, because what North Korea seeks is A, regime recognition, B, regime guarantee, and C, direct talks with USA.
Right.
And that is the only way forward. I'm afraid it's not a very palatable choice, but there is no other choice.
All right, Mr. Vishnu Prakash, former ambassador, joining us in the very latest with the North Korea missile program. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We appreciate your insights and inputs. All right, shifting gears now to the United States, where Hurricane Harvey has slammed into the Texas coast as a Category 4 storm on Friday around 10 p.m. local time. It packed winds of more than 200 kilometers an hour and is one of the most powerful storms to hit the mainland U.S. in more than a decade. Here's the report.
As a Category 4 hurricane hits the United States, one of the first major storms to hit the mainland since Hurricane Wilma struck Florida in 2005, people are evacuating and moving to safer grounds. Hurricane Harvey could uproot trees, destroy homes, and disrupt utilities for days. The storm will move over Texas and Louisiana for days. The town of Rockport was hardest hit by Harvey's punch, hours after the mayor told anyone staying to write their names on their arms for identification. A high school, a hotel, a senior housing complex, and other buildings suffered damage. Some of them were used as shelters. Power, internet, and cell phone services were out in the town of 10,000. Most of the senior citizens and nursing homes were first to be evacuated. 6 million people were believed to be in Harvey's path, the heart of America's oil refining operations. Facing the first large-scale natural disaster of his president, Donald Trump signed a disaster proclamation to get more government help before Harvey made landfall. Fueled by the warm waters in the Gulf of Mexico, Harvey became the first Category 4 hurricane to wallop the US since Charley in 2004 and the first to hit Texas since Carla in 1961. Harvey has caused havoc in Corpus Christi and Galveston already in Texas. As the storm churned through land, high winds rocked the few cars on the streets and rocked sailboats in their docks. While thousands fled the expected devastating flooding, many stayed put at home, stocking up on food, fuels and sandbags. Harvey's size drew comparisons and real memories of Hurricane Katrina, which hit New Orleans in 2005 as a Category 3 storm. It caused levees and flood walls to fail and killed almost 1,800 people. The US government was blamed for a slow disaster response. So far, Louisiana and Texas have declared states of disaster to get more help from state resources. Hurricane Harvey has also caused gas prices to spike up as thousands in Texas fled the region. Bureau Report, WION.
All right, that does it for this edition of WION. World is One News. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Archit Seshadri. Have a good night.
We start with some breaking news coming in from Jammu and Kashmir at this point. A gun battle is on between the security forces in Pulwama in Jammu and Kashmir. What we do know at this point is that 4 CRPF men and 4 personnel from the Jammu and Kashmir police, they have been killed in the ongoing encounter. 2 terrorists have been neutralized and the gun battle is still on. Heavily armed attackers stormed the base in Pulwama town of south of Kashmir earlier today at 3 p.m. This comes as one of the biggest strikes on a government compound in the region in nearly a year. In fact, it's important to point out this encounter is big because hundreds of security personnel from the state and paramilitary police are stationed at their camps. over here in this particular area, and they stay there with their families. According to when reports came in, their families have been evacuated safely out of that zone at this particular point in time. But the gun battle, as we understand, is continuing. And the terrorist group Jaish-e-Mohammed is behind this attack that we saw today in Pulwama. That's the latest that we're getting, but the exact number of attackers inside the compound is still unknown. The security forces are continuously engaging with the terrorists who are believed to be holed up inside of this compound. The army and the police are jointly trying to dislodge these terrorists, and they've already evacuated families from the camp's residential block. And very crucial to point out that this attack is on the police complex, is one of the biggest on a state security facility since September last year. This is when armed terrorists broke into an army camp near the border, the line of control in Uri. 18 army personnel were killed last September in that attack. Already 8 security personnel are reportedly killed in the ongoing gun battle that is going on. It's almost 6 hours now. It all began at 3 p.m. when the attackers, these terrorists, opened fire at this base in Pulwama town. This is in south of Kashmir. Brigadier Mahalingam is on the phone line with us. He is a defense expert. Thanks so much for joining us here. Brigadier Mahalingam, how do you see the situation that's unfolding after Uri? This is one of the biggest attacks that we've seen, and Jaish-e-Mohammed has claimed responsibility. Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists are behind this entire attack.
So at the outset, I must say that my heart goes out with these families of the martyred CRPF men, as also the police, J&K police. Having said that, I must say that J&K police is doing a tremendous job in Kashmir, and they are the very same Kashmiri people, the Kashmiri men who belong to that very land. It is unfortunate those militants chose to attack and kill those very Kashmiri policemen who were doing their duties. Having said that, I must also bring out that South Kashmir for over a year now has been a hub of terrorism activities in Kashmir. As you rightly said, it is in South Kashmir, and 2 most important places, one, the Tral, and secondly, Kulgam, are the 2 bases of militants outfits in this particular area. And they have been growing very strong, and it is unfortunate that they attacked police lines. The point to bring out is that the very fact that they attacked the police line, there might be certain shortfalls in as far as the defenses, in as far as the protection are concerned. It is also possible, because this happened right in the middle of the Pulwama area in a known and a well-established camp, there might be there might be people who are very close to that camp who may be involved in guiding the militants to carry out this attack.
Right.
What is required is a detailed investigation will have to be carried out to ensure that this sort of a thing doesn't happen again, and the camp personnel will have to enhance their security themselves.
Valid points there. Brigadier Mahalingam, may I please request you to stay on the line with us. M.M. Khajuria, former DGP of Jammu and Kashmir Police, is now with us over the phone line. Sir, thanks so much for speaking to us. Can you give us a sense of how big is this attack that we're looking at? This is a base in Pulwama town of South Kashmir. This is a place where hundreds of security personnel from the state and paramilitary police are also stationed along with their families. Can you explain to us the magnitude and the significance of this place being attacked by Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists?
See, firstly, this attack should have been registered. Pulwama is the hub of their activities, and they practically hold the area under their control. Particularly after we had inflicted so many casualties on them, it should have been expected. Apparently there have been some left, some there, the parameter protection also needs to be looked into very seriously. And then our ability to respond to this kind of a situation, which, as I said, should have been expected, has not been up to the mark. Having said that, this is a war. In this war, you can't win all the battles. It's some they will win, some we will win. There'll be losses, and sad as that may be, unfortunate that may be, there's no option but to accept them. But the answer is to honestly do introspection, go into the deficiencies very, very professionally, try and keep the morale of our force up, that we have inflicted the casualties on them, they have inflicted casualties on us, we'll get back and we will deal with them. So the most important thing is that we have to be in control of the area.
Right.
Somehow we are not in the control of area yet, and a very major operation needs to be launched now to see that this setback is upset and that the people are assured that it is the security forces, it's the government that's in command and not the terrorists.
Absolutely. Sir, you pointed out there must have been a security lapse somewhere. Would you say that this is perhaps one of the biggest attacks that we've seen since the Uri attack that took place last September, and the fact that it happened in broad daylight at 3 p.m., that's when first reports came in?
Yeah, I would say that this is probably they can claim it as their most effective operation against us. And somewhere we will have to also accept that we not proved up to the expectations of the situation as well as the people. But as I said, the answer is an honest introspection and not blame game. And because it's a long war, it's not going to end tomorrow, day after tomorrow. The seesaw happens in wars. And therefore, the answer is to school headedly and thoroughly professionally go into this.
Right.
And take hold of the situation. The most important thing is that we must be present there in that area. We must control the area. Unless that happens, mere operations, killing people, coming and going on help, because this is a war in which they don't have any possibility either of men or of material. The entire global terrorism is behind their back, and that is what we are facing.
All right. Sir, may I please request you to be online with us? Brigadier Mahalingam, I'll come back to you in just a few moments. But Khalid Hussain, WION's correspondent, is joining us right now on the phone line with the very latest from Srinagar. Khalid, what's the latest? Is the gun battle still going on? Any word on how many more terrorists could be still holed up inside that compound?
Is still on. However, firefight has stopped from last 30 minutes, and the search operation is still on. The operation is continued because there are apprehensions that one more militant may be inside, and maybe he is killed. But unless the security forces will not retrieve his body, the operation will not be concluded. And if we see that the attack happened at around 4:20 a.m. in the morning, and since morning it's still going on. This time it's more than 12 hours now that this encounter is going on, and search now are going on from block to block. It has the whole DPL has 8 blocks, and 2 blocks where militants were seated were block D and block E. And in block E, this time search are still going on. They are searching the body of 3rd militant because firefight has stopped, and it's believed that he may have got killed. But unless the body is not retrieved, the operation will not be concluded. But there's a Jaish-e-Mohammed spokesperson has called a local news agency in Srinagar and has claimed the responsibility of this attack. However, security forces tell us that this was the group of Jaish-e-Mohammed militant outfit who have infiltrated through Poonch 1.5 months before. And now They have divided into parts of 3 to 4 militants, and this 3 militant group has attacked today. And this information of attack was and input was with the security personnel that some attack may happen in the Shopian or Pulwama area. And this indicates that despite knowing the fact that this kind of attack will happen in the area, still the attack happens. It has raised the question to the security scenario also. However, this is big attack, 8 casualties we have seen, 4 from CRPF, 4 from Jammu Kashmir police. So this way it's a big attack carried by the militants, but the security forces have now controlled the situation and have eliminated 2 of the militants who have sneaked in, and 1 more body may be there. However, there is no firefight this time going on at this point.
Okay. All right. So 17 hours and still counting the operation to flush out perhaps the remaining or terrorists who've already been gunned down in the gun battle that has been raging on since 4:30 a.m. in this base in Pulwama town of South Kashmir. Brigadier Mahalingam, if I can come back to you, we heard there Khalid Hussain giving us a detailed report on what has been happening through the day. Let's also point out that SP Vaid of the J&K police, he has refuted the possibility of a security lapse. He says you can't prevent somebody who is ready to die. Now, these are Fidain attackers, and as we've also been talking about this, the state had prior intelligence about a possibility of this attack because these Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists had infiltrated 1.5 months back.
There is a possibility, as I had mentioned previously, that there could be a security lapse. The very fact that an attack of this nature had taken place and it has been carrying on for so much of time, that is from 4:30 in the morning, and it seems to be continuing yet, it sort of brings out one point very categorically, the resolve in the people who are guarding the place to eliminate those terrorists. The point that I wish to make is, yes, there could be certain defaults, there could be certain mistakes, there could be certain sort of shortcomings, but it is now for the government to carry out proper thorough investigations and ensure that such lapses do not occur any moment.
Right.
And at this point of time, I would not like to put any blame on anyone, because the battle is still going on. People are still fighting, and people have been lost, and it is not appropriate for anyone to blame anyone at this point in time. Having said that, the second aspect which I would like to mention is Jaish-e-Mohammed is the organization which is reported to have done that. We must understand Jaish-e-Mohammed is a terror outfit, a proxy outfit for Pakistan's ISI, and obviously these people have been instructed to carry out this particular attack at this point in time. Jaish-e-Mohammed has also Hizbul Mujahideen and lashkar-e-taiba, in particularly in Pulwama district.
I get your point, Brigadier Mahalingam. Just stay with me. Lieutenant General Raj Kardian, who's a defence expert, is also on the line with us. I'll come back to you in just a bit, Brigadier Mahalingam. Lieutenant General Raj Kardian, thanks so much for speaking to us. Your first reaction on what's happening in Pulwama as we speak. Now, let me also point out that according to statements coming out from security forces from Kashmir, they say that the Operation All Out, which a top army commander has said, saying that the situation in the valley is much better and that they're increasing the number of operating bases in southern parts of Kashmir. But if these bases are not secure, then these kind of incidents, terror attacks, will continue to happen.
If you take the statistics of the last 4 months, security forces have been operating relentlessly. Flow of information had improved, and a number of important terrorist leaders had been eliminated. For the last couple of weeks, there had been a general quiet, but that is not to say that all the terrorists have been eliminated. They are confined to a very small area in South Kashmir. Pulwama is their hub center. A couple of attacks have taken place. The second part, since the terrorists fired the first shot, casualties on the part of the security forces are inevitable. of course, they can be minimized. The details are yet to come out. Second part I want to make is, once you have localized the terrorists, once you have surrounded them, then time is of no concern. In fact, we should not incur any risk just to hurry up the operation. They can't run away, they can't get away. So we should make sure that they are eliminated without causing any further damage to the security forces. Let it take even longer. That is not of any concern. Aim is to get them all without letting them escape, which I think they are ensuring. The area is surrounded.
Right, but in this case, they seem to be Fedayeen attackers, so they're not going anywhere, of course. They're there to kill themselves. What if they have explosives? Because this is also, something which is to be looked at, because this is a compound. But thankfully, the families of these security men, they've been moved out. So that's, not a very big point of concern at this point, sir. I get your point, what you're saying. Please go on.
Yeah. We have to ensure that there is no collateral damage, the families are safe, and there is no hurry to complete the operation. We are not in competition with anybody. As long as they are in the bag, they can't escape. That is what we should ensure, and I'm sure they have ensured that. Tire out, they will finish their ammunition, they will either give up or they will be killed. In fact, if somebody gives up, that is a great gain, because catching a terrorist alive is much more of value than getting a dead body. So we should not put pressure on the security forces to finish the operation quickly as possible. Their mettle is not under test. There is no match between the two, except that there are the terrorists, the civilians, difficult to identify. They fire the first shot, then only the security forces only react. So some casualties are bound to happen.
Right.
It is unfortunate, but it's inevitable. So let them take their time, because local commanders on the spot.
Absolutely. In fact, sir, as we are talking right now, reports coming in that a third terrorist has been neutralized. And if reports were to be believed, we spoke to our correspondent Khalid Hussain a couple of minutes ago, and he told us that the security forces were anticipating that after gunning down 2 terrorists, they were expecting just 1 more terrorist inside of the compound. And now that reports are coming in that this third terrorist has been neutralized, perhaps the threat is averted. But this, would you say, Lieutenant General Kardian, this attack is one of the biggest since Uri, in which 18 security personnel were killed?
Yeah, in the recent past, it can be termed as a big attack, because a number of people have suffered casualties. But this kind of attack cannot be totally ruled out. If
right.
you see the frequency of attacks have gone down,
absolutely,
the security forces have the upper hand.
Okay.
But that is not to say that they have been totally eliminated. There are still some elements which they may do a chip again.
Right. In fact, M.M. Khajuria, former DG Jammu and Kashmir Police, I believe, is waiting patiently on the line with us. Mr. Khajuria, sorry to keep you waiting, but coming back to you, do you think there is a need in, apart from coming up with these more number of bases in South Kashmir, which has seen a spurt in violence in the last year and a half, do you think there's also a need to make sure that these bases are secure and security is not breached in a sense, because these Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists, we believe, they had infiltrated it from Pooch, and it's been a month and a half, and this is not just 3 terrorists we're talking about. There could be more. They could be planning more attacks elsewhere in Jammu and Kashmir.
You see, whenever they commandeer the Jaish people, it means that they are going for some big action. And this is the response to the successes that security forces have achieved during the recent days. And this is not a time to lecture the security forces what they need to do, because they know what their business is. But the issues are that this war is not going to be settled only on the operation field. This is something much bigger, a larger picture, in which the local population and the ideological content is very important. So we have to fight this battle on both fronts. Obviously, the security forces will go into analyze what has happened, how things have gone, whether there anything needs to be preempted. There is no time for blame game, nor is anybody sort of trying to pick holes in what the security force is doing. But every operation has to be analyzed very, very carefully to find out how our responses can be improved and what can we do to
Mr. Khajuria, can I please request you to stay on the line with me? I'll come back to you. Mr. SP Vaid, who is the DGP of the Jammu and Kashmir Police, is also on the line with us. Sir, thanks so much for joining us. Can you tell us what's happening on the ground? We believe 8 security personnel, as reports coming into us have come in. They have lost their lives and 2 terrorists have been killed. Can you give us the latest, sir?
Yeah, that's right. We have 8 casualties on our side, 4 CRPF Jawans and 4 JNK policemen have been martyred, and we recovered 2 dead bodies. But I must compliment my boys from JNK police, the Army para unit and their officers, and CRPF. They did a great job in rescuing 36 people, occupant of those family quarters, and saved their lives. But unfortunately, we lost 8 our brave soldiers. We have recovered 2 dead bodies of the terrorists, and 3rd building is being searched. The search is yet not complete. Maybe one or militant is hiding in that building as well.
Right. Sir, thanks for that information. But we believe that these Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists infiltrated from Pooch about 1.5 months back. And we're also getting to hear that there was prior intelligence that few attacks are being planned in South Kashmir. Do you think something went wrong as far as, implementing more security in place is concerned? Because this is a base that we are talking about. And even though the Indian security forces have managed to successfully neutralize many, over 130 terrorists in the last 2-3 months, including 7 top commanders, this attack comes as a setback of sorts, because this is also looks like one of the biggest since Uri last September.
That's right. That will be looked into, but the security forces are doing a commendable job, and I'm sure the country should be proud of their work. The boys here in Kashmir, whether from Army, CR paramilitary or police or JNK police, are doing a great job, and I think the whole nation must compliment them.
Absolutely. We completely understand the security forces and their efforts. Can you talk to us about Operation All Out? And, a part of that is increasing the number of operation bases, especially in southern parts of the valley. Do you think that apart from increasing the number of bases, securing them is also proving to be an issue with this attack taking place?
So we need to take precautions. I think there was, as you said, intelligence reports, but in a situation where people are ready to do or die, and in spite of all best possible measures, these things do occur, and the best thing is to minimize damage, and I think rescuing 36 people was a great job they have done.
Lieutenant General Sindhu, who is the GOC of Srinagar, sir, he said that yes, there have been a number of local boys who have joined militants, and I hope in due course they'll start realizing it's not worth it. But he also said that the situation in Kashmir is much better than last year, and the violence levels have reduced to a great extent. Is this incident, sir, does this not raise doubts about, the possibility of more deadly terrorist attacks? We are talking about Fidaiin attackers over here.
That I think we'll take care of those things, but I tend to agree with General Sandhu what he said. The things are much better than what it was in 2016, and on ground things have improved tremendously. I think this is must have been engineered from across to take. Because their morale was down and they had setbacks. I think just to to counter that, these actions like this are being taken.
And my last question before we let you go, sir. 17 hours on, do you think the battle is coming to an end?
I think in another 1 or 2 hours it should be over.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us, speaking to WION. I'd also like to thank Mr. M.M. Khajuria and Lieutenant General Raj Kadian and Brigadier Mahalingam for joining us with their perspective on this situation that's unfolding in Pulwama. Just to recap for our viewers, before we conclude this edition of the broadcast, 8 security personnel, 4 from Jammu and Kashmir Police and 4 from CRPF have been killed in this ongoing battle. 2 terrorists have been gunned down. These terrorists are Fedayeen attackers belonging to Jaish-e-Mohammed. And what we do know as of now, in this security compound in Pulwama, at least 1 more terrorist could be holed up. He might be dead. We don't know that yet, but we will keep you up to date with whatever is happening in Pulwama right now. That's all then in this edition. Taking a short break. News and updates continue right here on WION.